Priyal, hello. Welcome to the Social Shifters podcast, where we speak to the next generation of leaders, innovators, and entrepreneurs, young people doing incredible things all over the world with startups. Firstly, just want to say welcome and congratulations for winning our Global Education Challenge 2023. How does it feel?
It feels super amazing. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super excited to speak to you about the journey, and I'm very honored to be here today.
It's a pleasure to host you, and you really blew our judges away with your pitch in the final step of the Global Innovation Challenge journey. Just for anyone who's tuning in, can you just give a brief introduction to yourself and your project, StandWeSpeak?
Sure. Hello, all the listeners. I am Priyal. I'm the founder of StandWeSpeak, where we are creating a 21st century sexual wellness ecosystem for millennials and Gen Z, also like the young people. So what we are doing essentially is we are building an anonymous chatbot for sexual wellness, where you can find information, videos, you can talk to experts like gynecologists, counselors, lawyers, and we have tons of resources. And it's also gender inclusive and age appropriate, so anyone can come by and seek whatever information and services that you need at just like one platform whenever you want, at the ease of like being at your home. So that's what we are building as of now.
It's an incredible idea. It's an incredible program and product. Priyal, you're based in India. Tell us, or give us a little bit of context for those of us who've never been to India and don't know much about that part of the world. Why is it important for you to be working in this space of sexual and reproductive health in India in particular?
So talking about India, it's very interesting that we have the highest population in the world, but yet nobody talks about sex or sexuality or gender for that matter. There is no like formal education in schools. Our parents are reluctant to talk about it. Friends have like no idea whatsoever. They're just as clueless as we are. And these services are not very accessible to young people. Any of the sexual wellness services, if you want in India, it's available to the married couple. But for young people, even if you want to learn about it, there's no resource at all. So growing up, even we didn't know. We had questions, we would discuss it with friends, but we would just be like given misinformation or whatever little idea they had. So, for example, when I was in seventh grade, my friend told me that if you kiss a boy when you have your periods, you will get pregnant. And I used to believe that for the longest time because there was no way for us to even verify the information. And even now, the scenario is changing, but more or less, it's still, we come from a place where we can't talk to our parents, we can't talk to our teachers. Right now, we have been relying on technology a lot, but young people still don't know how to verify the information or which source is really reliable. Even in terms of friends, there's hardly like any conversation happening which is very open because some people judge you on what you're doing. And because you don't have the correct words while growing up, so you are also reluctant to even initiate a conversation, which becomes really difficult. So because of that, we have been having really high cases of unintended pregnancies, really high abortion rates, even amongst teenagers. And India also has the third largest HIV epidemic in the world. So to solve all of those issues, we are working on building like a platform which people can rely on.
Yeah, so we can laugh a little bit about some of the rumors that go around as young children, and you mentioned that, and I remembered very similar pieces of information being exchanged when I was at school in Scotland in the UK, and it's funny to remember that, but there's a very serious side to this, of course, the lack of education, the stigma that sort of is kind of heaped then upon sexual and reproductive health related education and information has the opposite effect of maybe what people who don't want to talk about it would want, which is the spread of sexually transmitted diseases, unplanned, often unwanted pregnancies, and all of the sort of social issues that come along with that. So it's a really important issue to address, it sounds like to me.
It absolutely is, because when we started off, um, so I'll tell you about like where did the idea come from and why did I dive into it. I was actually studying psychology and I wanted to become a counselor. As soon as I did my undergraduation, what really happened was I came across one of my friends' story. She was 19 and she got pregnant. And she did not tell anyone for the first like 2, 3 months. She tried going to a gynecologist, and the gynecologist denied performing abortion because he said, "Oh, you are unmarried. You need to call your parents." Even though it was legal for her to get an abortion, but then she faced denial and stigma, and they really bullied her in a way that she could not even like seek the service. And then she consumed a dozen contraceptive pills because she couldn't even talk to her friends. As soon as I got to know, I also like looked for an expert who could perform the abortion without, judging the situation. That was when it hit me that I started doing research, and I realized that there are a lot of people who go through the same issue, but we hardly have any services that is catering to them. So I left, I took a detour from my education and decided to work on this issue. Um, but even when I started, I don't come from like a technology background or a business background, but I knew that I wanted to solve this issue.
What made you think that you can do this? What gave you the confidence to just go ahead and give this a try?
Like I said, I wanted to do psychology, which was basically working on the minds of people who have gone through a trauma, who have gone through something that they needed to heal. So it's more like performing surgery on someone who has met with an accident. And then it hit me that we have so many counselors in India who are working on this, but then who's working on stopping from the accidents from happening in the first place? So that was when I decided to work on the education side, educating young people so that they can make informed decisions. And like I said, I don't have any technology or a business background. I was just like a fresh graduate, still trying to process what I wanted to do. But this incident really helped me convert the thoughts that I had into action. And I did not even, it wasn't like, oh, I always knew that I wanted to become a social entrepreneur. It was just that I wanted to solve this issue anyhow. This problem needed to be solved. And I started working on different ideas. I took like education on becoming a sexuality educator. I started conducting workshops, talking to people. Just wanted to like provide that information that young people needed. And through that, a lot of people started reaching out and asking me for like being connected to experts if I knew any counselors or gynecologists, and they needed product recommendations, what contraceptives they could use, what period products they could use. That's when I started thinking of building a bigger solution because I could not be everywhere at once. And I did not want to be the center point of people reaching out. So I wanted to replace myself with something that people could have access to 24/7. So May, our anonymous chatbot, evolved from that, from the users who were reaching out to us. So we leveraged technology to build this platform that is accurate, that is reliable, that is accessible 24/7 from anywhere across the whole world. Anyone can have access to it. So we built a solution just by, interacting with people and what they needed.
It's an inspiring story, Priyal. So you have a psychology graduate who doesn't really know much about tech and doesn't really know much about business and hasn't really experienced startup before, but there's an issue that is important to you that you want to do something about, and that becomes your starting point, and everything else you're learning as you go. You've also mentioned AI now, so there's some fairly complex technology. I'm assuming you're not or weren't previously an AI expert. So tell us about that. How is the AI component of your platform and product taking shape, and what challenges has that brought you to try and replace the real Priyal with an artificial Priyal?
It's actually very funny because when I started and when I first pitched my idea to people who were running an incubation center, there were three men And as soon as I said I wanted to talk about sex and sexuality, they said, "Oh, you are too young. You don't have the experience. And this is not something that we need in India. Children don't need to know about any of these stuff." And they were not really willing to support me initially. And I said, just give me some time and I'll prove you wrong. I will give you enough data that this is needed, especially in a country like India. So I did my pilot study, I did some basic research, and I started conducting surveys. And I gave them enough results that I this is something that is a big problem and needed to be solved. But at the same time, I was alone. I didn't have a team who could support me with, building, like you said, tech, or coming with like the business idea of it. How are we going to make it sustainable? So for 1 year, because this topic is not something that especially women can talk about in India, I did not tell anyone. My parents, my friends, nobody knew about StandWeSpeak and the idea that I was working on. And because I could not seek help outside, I started learning things on my own. So I learned how to build a website. It took me like 4 months. I learned and then I built my own website. I took like courses on like how to do finances and I was working on it. I learned like how to create content and how can I verify all the sexuality education material that we were building. So for the initial 1 year, I was literally doing everything that I needed to do to make like a prototype of Stanley Speak. So I did that. And after 1 year, there was this competition that was held in India, which was mainly about recognizing these innovations in like social issues conducted by Velcro. And we won first place in that. And that gave us enough validation where we could begin from. That's when I started seeking help. And that also gave us initial funding to hire more people and, build like a prototype in a better manner so that we can also showcase it to others. So that was the initial point. That was where the validation came from, that this idea has some potential and this idea could be worked on. So similarly, like the initial step of Velcro, I really believe that Social Shifters is also doing like an incredible work in supporting young entrepreneurs who are trying to change something in the society and taking an initiative uh, that is on a very big scale, but they are driven towards solving the issue no matter what. So this validation, this competition, this funding really helps us keep on going and keep on working on the solution no matter the challenges that we face, because this journey sometimes get really tiring and lonely, but this validation, this recognition really helps us pave the way. It's like, how in the dark, if you're driving, you can't see very far ahead. You can just see as much as like the headlights can show you, but you know that you're in the right direction and you keep on moving. So this validation is like that. It gives us enough fuel to keep going in the right direction, even if we can't see like the very future of it.
Well, yeah, hopefully some fuel and maybe a little bit of extra runway. Maybe some markings, some markings on the road immediately in front of you. But no, thank you for saying that, Priyal. And yeah, look, that is why we exist at Social Shifters. It really is about this phase that you've just described to us. It's the phase, the really crucial phase where you have something that is really important to you and powerful and driving you forward to find solutions. But getting to that first win, that first validation, it doesn't need to be a lump sum of money or a competition win, but I guess sometimes it is. But something that to validate your thinking and the work that you've done. We know that is when the vast majority of, just startups generally fall away, but particularly when it comes to sort of social startups, that is the critical period, and so that's the period we're interested in. That's kind of why our funding is set where it is, and we target the people we target. But I just want to in relation to that phase, want to touch on some things that I hear when you describe your journey, and I'm hearing certainly lots of motivation and kind of courage to sort of lots of drive to just push on. But also I'm hearing defiance in you, and those three men who told you no. Of course, three men told you no, and I'm sure they're not the only people that have said no to you, or have told you that this is not needed, or that this isn't the right thing for you to be pursuing, and I don't know if that's sometimes friends, sometimes family, people around you, but how many people have you had to defy, do you think? I don't need a number, but in that first phase of the journey, particularly with sexual and reproductive health, particularly in the part of the world that you're from, if you had to be quite defiant?
A lot, actually. I can't even if I think about numbers, I don't think I would be able to come up with one, because a lot in India, especially. This was just the beginning when I was pitching. But every time I brought this topic up, everybody would just go like silent. Nobody even wanted to listen. Even as an entrepreneur, when I started off, I would go to these meetings for entrepreneurs, and I usually would be the only woman. And if I bring this topic up of sexuality education, people would just stare at me and not like ask questions, not even ask about the idea. This was just the initial phase. But even after we built the prototype, I started reaching out to investors in India. And even they were so reluctant. They said, what you're doing is wrong. It's against our culture. And, you should stop doing whatever you're doing. This company is not needed and nobody's ever going to fund you. This was not just one investor. We faced this similar issue with a lot of investors and a lot of people that I also went to just seek advice from. They said, why don't you just delve into mental health side that's more popular? Why don't you, work on something else? You have this drive and you can use this for like a better cause than just working on this. Some said nobody's ever going to marry you because, you are a young person, young woman talking about sex and sexuality. So this initially became a real issue, and I started doubting whether this idea was good enough or not. But what really kept me going was the users who were coming to us every single day. That was what I knew. That was what made me knew that I was in the right direction, because young people, people like teenagers and like young adults, they started reaching out every single day, asking questions, and they had like tons of misconceptions in mind, and they wanted to have those information and resources. So I knew that what I was building was correct for the next generation, for the coming generation, even though I can't change the mind of the previous generation. So I don't need to focus on them. I need to focus on what's coming. And then I started reaching out to people who were in the social sector and investors who were more conscious about where they were investing and those who wanted to solve a global issue. And that really helped me. I started reaching out to also advisors. Amelia was my first mentor. She's also from UK. She is the founder of School of Sexuality Education. So a lot of people from around the globe really came in into supporting me. I have also like advisors from really big universities, from like Goldman Sachs, from Citibank, and all of these happened not by like any planning. I just started reaching out to them on LinkedIn, like a cold message that, hey, I'm working on this. And since you have the expertise, could you just like help me out with this one issue that I'm facing? And I realized that a lot of people are open to helping you out if you just ask for the help. So that is where I started focusing more. I became very conscious about whom I am asking and what help I'm asking rather than pitching it to anyone who could be like open to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, we're so glad that you said you ignored those people who told you not to continue, and that you had the defiance and this courage to continue and to take it to where it is today. I want to bring it back to the product and the platform you're developing, and it clearly started with education and information, and then enhancing that with artificial intelligence and ways to sort of validate that education. But I'm wondering, you mentioned trauma is a big part of these issues of sexual and reproductive health that you're dealing with. And I imagine there's lots of users and people who are coming to you experience some degree of trauma, or are going through it at the time. Is there how much of what you're building is going to be about community and the support of one another in some of these kind of traumatic scenarios?
So to begin with, we started with a community. When I was conducting workshops, we created a common group where people could join, and they could, if they had any more questions, they could ask, because the online platform, the online workshop, I realized that people were not very comfortable asking questions directly. They would always reach out to me after the session was over. So we built this community where they could always come back. And we built a community of around 1,000 or 1,500 people. And after I started interacting with all of them, we side by side started working on the idea of developing May, our chatbot. But the community is still there. The reason we built the chatbot was to help people initiate the conversation, which is the most difficult part of this journey. And once they feel safe enough in a place where they can bring up the topic or bring up the issue that they are going through, then they can join another community and meet other people who are going through the same. So this community was the first step. Building StandWeSpeak, like the May is the second. And third, with the experts, we are also now coming up with smaller communities of specific issues. For example, dating violence. So we are creating one group where all of the users could come in and they could go through therapy in a group setting. So we are now creating different groups for different issues and being more specific about their journey.
Fantastic. And is that part of what the AI is doing for you, or is this at the moment is this a manual process? Who manages your communities? How do they take shape?
So communities, AI is not doing that. It's more manual. So once users start coming in, we give them an option to join our community, and if they are open to it, because a lot of people don't want to reveal their identity, so they are a little hesitant. But once they're open, we connect them with our experts, and the experts leads on that. So it's more of a manual process as of now.
Okay, I'm with you. And what does the future have in store for you, Priyal, as a founder, but I guess also for StandWeSpeak as a platform, as a community, as a product? What's your vision for this? How far do you want to take it? And is this going to be a global phenomenon?
We do want to take it global because I do see that this problem is huge and it's on a global level. And since it's completely online and completely like tech driven, I do see future in this where people from any country, from any language, from any culture could have access to all the services. So at the current moment, we are trying to make this more inclusive by adding more languages, by adding voice assistant, and by adding more and more resources, different cultures. So country-wise, what barriers they face. So once this is more inclusive, we have already launched this in South Korea, but now we are looking to expand more. We are conducting workshops in Nepal, in Philippines. So we are looking at what exactly do they need. Even we have been reached out by a really big organization in Japan, because they said that young people in Japan also need this anonymous platform. So I really feel that even in the most developed countries, people do want their children to start learning basics about their bodies, safety, and while growing up, be very open about discussions, because this is a very central part of who you are as a human.
Yeah, and I think the countries that you're talking about make sense. I think we certainly saw some similar projects at an earlier stage in places like Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia. So that makes perfect sense. But it absolutely is a global issue. I guess the cultural sensitivities, and of course the languages will change from place to place. I think that's where it becomes really interesting piece of work for you as you look to scale this next year. So it's really exciting to hear that you've got plans to take over the world.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see how this shapes up.
Priyal, can I just ask you? You did mention social shifters earlier on, but I just would like to know how the program was for you, and in particular the support of coaches, of volunteers. But yeah, the process of application and pitching, and now coming out of the other end with a grant funding award. How has it helped you and or your team to progress this year?
So I think what really sets social shifters apart is that in most competitions, we just apply, there's a big pitching round, and the winners are announced and they're just given the funding. But over here, the whole journey from right from application to where we had, sessions on pitching, mock pitching, where we were also learning how to, what slides to keep, what are the ideas that we can more work on. And we were also given ideas as to what could be included. So those pitching rounds and being connected to mentors, that was a huge help because uh, we come from a set mindset. We are working in one particular direction, but having perspective from the industry experts really helps us expand our horizon and think in a different line as well. So having mentors who were also giving us feedback on the pitch, on our ideas, on our journey, and how we could also, in the next steps, take it forward, was a very transformative journey because that gave us more more ideas and more perspective into how we could continue working on this as compared to just like having our own idea about it. And over these years, we have grown a lot in terms of like the issues that we were facing. We also had like a community where we could share the problems we were going through. We had people who were facing the similar challenges. So it really felt like a safe space where we were in this together and we were building something together on a global level. So that gave us a feeling of being connected to people who were just like us. And even during the final round, it was very comfortable because we grew so much in the past months with all the effort and all the support that we received from the team. That really helped us in a way that I don't think we have received so far in any of the like competitions that I've faced before. So I think it was very supportive in our journey rather than just like a one-stop competition that you could apply for.
Oh, well, thanks for sharing that with us, Priyal. Because the volunteer component is a big part of the Social Shifters Global Innovation Challenge program, and it's good to hear that type of support really helped move you forward. And certainly, from seeing the final pitch that you gave, it was very well polished. So it's nice to know that there was some support prior to that to get you to that point where it was super slick, super sharp, and quite powerful.
Yeah, the credit goes to the Social Shifters team. They really helped me throughout their journey to like refine that.
I will pass that on to the Social Shifters team. Thank you. Priyal, just to finish off, we often like to ask for one golden piece of advice, one top tip that you might give to people at an earlier stage than you. So that's kind of who we're here to support, bring people through that first challenging stage, taking an idea and building something around it, or a social issue, and acting on it. So if there was one small piece of advice that you could give to your former self, I don't know if that would be a year ago or more, what might that be?
One piece of advice I will say, and I really believe in it, is that you don't have to know how you're going to solve the problem. You just need to believe that you can. That belief in itself is enough for you to get through because every step of the way you will find the solution. But you just need to have that in you that you want to solve the problem that you're working on because you're very passionate and very close to that. So just stick to it. Just listen to your gut and you will find the solution. Just keep like focusing on like the problem and why you're passionate about it. And eventually you will find the solution.
I think that's good advice, and difficult still to stick with your gut, particularly when people are telling you no, people are telling you that's not possible, and you know. So I think you are sort of a very good example of someone who is able to to persevere through that and get to the other side despite people telling you otherwise.
Yeah, and I really believe that you don't need to have everything figured out. Like I said, I didn't have tech or business or anything, but everything falls into place because I was just willing to work on it.
Well, Priyal, it's been a pleasure speaking to you today. Thanks so much for joining us on the Social Shifters podcast, and for sharing a little bit of your journey so far. We really wish you the very best of luck with StandWeSpeak. We know it's not going to be the last that we see of you, and it sounds like you are taking this to the world.
Thank you so much for having me here. It was a pleasure speaking to you as well. Thank you so much.
If you want to learn more about Social Shifters and how we can help you to impact the social or environmental issues that matter to you most, subscribe to our YouTube channel or find us on Instagram and Spotify.